Today we're going to cover setting up a Ruby on Rails e-commerce store using Fly.io. Now this is a Heroku alternative that does offer some free web hosting, but because the Solidus store that we're going to be setting up is a little bit more demanding, we're going to have to resize our Fly.io instance up to a 512 megabyte server, which I think incurs some billing fees. Just so you're aware, it's like $3 or maybe $5 a month, something like that. And the other part of it is going to be a DigitalOcean Spaces. So that is for the actual image storage. So if I come over here and I open this up, so we have the Solidus Spaces here. This is going to be $5 a month. So overall, you're looking at like $8 to $10 a month. But this is required for active storage to be able to host the images for our Rails instance. So that's just something else to be aware of, that there are going to be some fees for that as well. So you're looking at about $8 a month as opposed to, I think, Shopify's $30 a month. Just a little bit more on your end here in terms of what you need to actually create. So we're going to go ahead, we're going to get started. We're going to make a blank e-commerce app, and we're just going to build the whole thing from scratch. It shouldn't take too long because the steps are pretty straightforward as long as we're not completely reinventing the wheel. So the first thing we're going to do is do a Rails new, and we'll call this Solidus. And then for this, we can either give it a JavaScript bundling with -j, so that'd be like ESBuild. We could give it a CSS with -c, maybe give it like Tailwind, and you can give it like a database of Postgresql if you wanted to. In this case, we're just going to go with a very bare bones one. It's just going to be straight Solidus, and then we'll just add in some stuff as we go along. Now, normally I skip the initial creation step, but I wanted to do this from complete start to finish so that you have something to follow if you're a bit newer. So the next thing we need to do is we need to cd into our Solidus app. I'm going to type a code dot to open up VS Code, and then we're going to have to head over to Fly.io to actually install the Fly.io control line interface, or command line interface. I don't know what I'm saying. It's 4 in the morning. So you're going to go over to Fly.io, then you're going to find the docs and the getting started page. So docs, you're going to want to look for install flyctl. And for Linux, you're just going to grab this one right here and you're going to run it. Now I can go ahead and run this because it's pretty quick. And once it's done, in my case, it'll say we're good to go. But if you try to run like the fly command, it might not work for you. And the reason being, when you run this, it should tell you that there's, where is it? I guess I don't have it here. It should tell you that there's 2 things you need to add to your, let me just do this. I'll do a sudo nano, your dot profile. And then in here, if I come down to the bottom, we should see these right here. You need to add your export fly _ctl. Let me make sure you can actually read this. Equals /home/ your username /.fly, and then you have to export the path equal to flyctl install bin path. By adding these 2, you'll then be able to use your flyctl commands just like you would expect. You may need to restart your terminal to make those work though. So once that's done, you can then enter your Rails app and you can follow along with the rest of these commands. We're going to set up Solidus first. So the first thing we really have to do here is just add the Solidus gem. Now last time I skipped the adding it part because I just used the bundle add command, but this time we can just do that ourselves. So we'll just come down here, we'll say gem Solidus, save it, and then we can run a bundle install command inside of our application, and that'll add the Solidus gem. Once that's added, we can then go ahead and run the bin rails g solidus :install command. Just like this, bump up the font size a bit, and this should run through the entire installer. Now, yeah, we'll just hit yes for this because we want our authentication. Now this will take a little bit, and it'll go through, it'll add a bunch of gems and other stuff that we can worry about later. Once you have your Fly.io set up, I guess right here we have to also add the, oops, not that, sorry for blinding you. We have to add the Solidus starter front end, so we're just going to copy that. We're going to type in Solidus underscore starter underscore front end, hit enter, and that'll just run through all of that. Once that's done running, you can then come over to Fly.io. You're going to want to log in. So you're going to come over to here, go over to dashboard, and then you're going to want to make sure that you're good to go on your dashboard. You don't need to create an app. We'll do that from the command line, but you are going to have to add your billing information. It might ask you to do that. If you log in with GitHub, you're going to want to do a password reset, I think, and make sure you can log in with your email and your password. If you're using WSL, because for me, the WSL login wasn't working with GitHub, so I had to actually manually log in. And that was done with another command that I can show you in a second here. Let me just open up a new terminal. So I think what I did was I did fly auth login -I, and then that asked me for my email and then my password, and then I was able to log in from there. So that's just how I did the authentication in WSL because it wasn't working for me. Now, Solidus is going to ask for a email and password for your admin information. I'm just going to leave it as admin@example.com and test123 because we're not going to be using this. We covered this in last week's tutorial, so it's not a super big deal that we go through all of the demo stuff for Solidus to work. But once this is done, we should have our demo app that we can then work from. The next thing we're going to want to do is come over to DigitalOcean. Now, if you're not familiar with DigitalOcean, there is a referral code that I think I can share with you. So this is an affiliate link, and if I come over here to the referrals, I'll have a link to this in the video description. Basically, DigitalOcean gives me $25 if you spend $25 after 2 months. But the reason why this is beneficial is it gives you $100 in credit for 2 months. So it's basically free hosting. So you can set up this space, have it running for 2 months, and then you'll get charged for the 3rd month. It's just a way to get started to sort of experiment with this. I don't know any free like spaces hosting that are S3 compatible like AWS or this one. So that's sort of why I go with DigitalOcean for this. But once you have a DigitalOcean account, hopefully you use the affiliate link or whatever, and then you can come over to your spaces. You're going to want to create a new spaces right here. I feel like I'm going to say spaces a lot in this tutorial. And then you can choose whichever zone you want. I'll choose New York 3. Make sure you remember which one you choose, although it doesn't totally matter. And I'll just call this Solidus-video maybe. That'll give us something to work with. We can then create a space. Okay, now that that's been created, we are pretty much good to go here. So all of these should be fine. You're then going to have to come down to API, and I have a couple here that I've been using that can probably get deleted now. But what we're going to have to do is create a new API key. So we're going to delete these, and we're going to generate a new key. We're just going to call this one Solidus. Then once that's done, don't refresh because this should generate the key, assuming it's working, with a public key and a private key. And I think if you refresh, these go away. So we do need to use these like right now. So I'm going to come over to the application, and I'm just going to type editor equals, and we'll say quotes, code space, -- wait. And then we want to do space, Rails, credentials, : edit. There we go. That should open it up in this VS Code editor here. Now that we've done that, we can come in here and we can say DigitalOcean : and then we tab over and we say this is the access key ID. We set the access key ID equal to this first one, and then we can do a secret access key. We can set this equal to the second one, hopefully. We can save those, and then we can close this, and that'll cause this to save. So that's looking good. We are now sort of done with our DigitalOcean space, but if we come back up to our spaces real quick and go over to the Solidus video settings, and then in the settings, we need to grab this NYC3 DigitalOcean spaces endpoint. And we're going to come over to our config and our storage.yml. I hit Control-B to hide the side panel, F11 to full screen. I'm going to grab this Amazon block and uncomment it because we're going to reconfigure the Amazon block to be a DigitalOcean block instead. This is pretty simple to do. Basically what we do is we replace Amazon with DigitalOcean. This is just cosmetic. You could of course leave it as Amazon. It's just what we're going to call it in our config file in a second here. Now below service, we need to add another block. We're going to call it endpoint, and then we're going to paste in that NYC3 endpoint. We then have our access key and secret key, and we're getting these out of our Rails credentials. So these need to correlate with what we just put in there. Now we put both of these inside of a DigitalOcean block, and we named one access key ID and the other one secret access key, which is why we named them those things. The last thing we need to do is change our region, which is our NYC3. And then our bucket is going to be whatever we named our space, which in my case is going to be Solidus-video. And then I need to make sure it's on the same line. Once that's done, I can go ahead and save that. I can now do a Rails S, hopefully, to start my local server. And now let me go to localhost port 3000, make sure all of this is working. So this should take a second because I'm running all of this locally, and there we go. So now we have our store up and running. Looks good to me. I'm going to go to /admin to log into my admin account, which we created by default, and it was admin@example.com and test123. Hopefully that works. Looks good. So now I should be able to go to /admin. That'll take us to the admin panel. I can come back here to products. And before I forget, I actually have to change one more thing. We have to come into our Explorer, our environments, and our production.rb. And then we want to look for active storage right here. And we want to change this storage service to match this word right here, which we named it DigitalOcean. So let me save that. I'm going to stop the server, and then I'm going to run a Rails S again just to refresh. And that should hopefully force us over to the DigitalOcean space, which it has. So now what I want to do, I'm going to full screen this. I'm going to come over to products, create a new product, call it test, give it some arbitrary price, a default shipping category. I'll click create. I'm going to come over to images, choose files to upload, and I'm just going to try to upload any image here. So that looks like it worked. So now we should hopefully see this inside of our DigitalOcean space if we go over to files. Now in this case, I am going to need you to pay more attention than I am because I thought this was going to appear somewhere, but this is running in development, not production. We added this to our production.rb file. So the only real way we can test this right now is if we were to run this in production. So I'm going to grab this, come over to development.rb, search for active storage, and hide the side panel. I'm going to switch the development one to use the same spaces. It's not really how I would normally do this, but it'll at least let me test and make sure this is working. So let me come over here and refresh, and now it's going to tell us we have a missing service adapter. So that's what I was hoping to see. So the missing service adapter is basically telling us we have to add the compatibility gem to our gem file. So if we come over to our gem file and I open up my note application here that has all of my stuff, there are a couple of gems we're going to have to add here. One is going to be our, oops, not that. One is going to be for the AWS SDK S3 gem. And then the other one is something that Fly.io was having an issue with Ruby 3.1 for me. This might not be an issue for you, but I'm going to add it anyways. And it was just REXML. So I'm going to add both of those. And I'm going to run a bundle install command. And then we should be good to go. I'll run a Rails S again. And hopefully this will stop the error from showing up for the S3 adapter. There we go. So now we have all of these, but I don't think the images should be working. So let me delete this image and try to upload a new one. We upload, I don't know, those books belong in a museum one. There we go. So that seems to have worked. And now if we come over to our DigitalOcean space and we look at the files, we should hopefully see them pop in, which it looks like they are. So we're getting the books and their variants, it looks like. Okay, so all of that's working on the spaces side. The next thing we have to actually do is handle the deploying to a Fly.io instance. So for this, we can come over to Fly.io, the docs, there is a Rails section, so Rails on Fly. So this is /docs/Rails. Then you're going to want to go to existing Rails apps. And then from there, you can just do something like this. You can type fly launch. It'll then tell you, hey, you have a Rails app. What do you want to name this? I'm going to call mine Solidus-video. It's going to ask me for a region. I don't know. I'll pick something that seems good. Dallas, Texas. Sure. It's going to ask me if I want a Postgres database. You can pick yes. I'm going to pick no for this one. I'm just using a SQLite database. Now it's going to tell us to run fly deploy, but we're going to run into a few issues if we try and do that. So we can look in the Docker file. If you've never looked in a Docker file before, basically this is everything that's going to configure and set up for you if you're trying to run one of these. You have some packages that are only needed at build time, and then you have some packages that are needed during runtime. So in my case, I added a couple things to the runtime packages, I believe. And those were a Node.js package, a npm package, and a libvips-dev package. So the Node.js is pretty self-explanatory. We're going to be using some Node commands, so we want to have those. npm is also fairly self-explanatory. And libvips, well, actually, I guess this isn't self-explanatory. Basically, installing Node.js this way for some reason wasn't giving me npm access, so I had to actually manually install npm. Libvips is just used for the image processing gem. So when the active storage side of things creates those 3 different variant images, those are all being done through libvips, and for that we need the libvips dev tools. Otherwise, we get errors because of active storage. And then the last thing that we have to do is we have to come in here. After we have the rm-rf command, we're going to add another line to our Docker file, where we'll say and npm install -g for global and yarn. So we're just adding a command to install yarn as well, because it was yelling at me that it didn't have yarn. I don't know why it needs it, but it was upset, so I made it work. I'm not really a professional. I'm just here to show you stuff that does work. The last thing I want to do is down here, after we have the fly build command, I want to add in a line that creates another command. So we're just creating some args, which are going to be the bin rails db migrate. We're going to add those to our run command. And then we can do another one for the bin rails db seed command, and then we'll seed the database as well. I like keeping these things in the Docker file personally, because this is where I look when I'm trying to figure out what happens. I know that it also has like a fly.toml file, and then in the fly.toml file, it does a bunch of bin rails commands. So you could also modify your bin rails if you want to. But personally, I prefer to keep things in the Docker file like this, just because it makes sense to me. But because we're adding the DB seed here, we have to come into our DB and our seeds, because it does seed the database with an admin user, but that requires user inputs, and I don't feel like modifying it. So we're going to comment out the spree auth right here. So that'll stop it from doing the user creation on its own, and then we'll have to manually go in and create an admin user, which I can show you how to do. But okay, once all of that's done, we can then come over to Solidus and the existing Rails section, and we can run the next command. So we have our fly launch. We now need to do a fly deploy. We're going to run a fly deploy. It should try to spin up a remote image, and then it should go through all of the commands with the Docker file and all of the other stuff and try to get things working. As this is running, I'm going to come over to Fly.io's dashboard and take a look. We can see here Solidus-video. Now this will fail unless we resize it. The reason being it wants like 500 megs worth of memory, and the free tier here seems to only have 256. So what I had to do was come into the scale, I think, and then I had to scale this. I left it at shared CPU. Oops, I left it at shared CPU, but for some reason it's not working. There we go. And I set the memory to 512. I clicked scale now, and that should affect the billing metrics, but that should allow this to deploy just fine. And then once this is done, we should hopefully have something that's close to working. Okay, and now we can see it has started to spin up. We're getting yelled at for using SQLite in production, but aside from that, this should hopefully be working now. So we can come into our application, and in here somewhere, if I can remember where, it should be right here. Our application information has a solidus-video.fly.dev. If we go there, we can see that our application is currently live. We can come in here and try to log in. That won't work, but I can just do a dean@example.com. the password of password. So that'll allow me to log in, but of course we have nothing to purchase yet. So let's log out and let's create an admin account. Now to do this, basically what we have to do is we have to SSH into our instance. So we have our fly command. We can do a SSH. SSH gives us some options, including the console option. So if we do fly SSH console, that should SSH us into the console for the application we're currently in. So in this case, it's going to take me to the Solidus-video one, which is this app right here that I'm looking at. Once we're in here, some commands won't work because it's a different operating system. So you do have to use commands like dir to see which folder you're in or which directory. I'm going to cd into app because this is where our Rails file exists. And then from in here, we can't use Rails as a command. So instead, we have to do this the old-fashioned way and type /bin/Rails. And that'll give us access to an actual Rails command. And then from there, I can't actually clear the console, it looks like. There we go. From there, we can do a bin/Rails and a console command if we want to enter our Rails console and see how things look in here. We can hit Control-D to exit that. The other thing we can do is a bin/Rails spree_auth : admin : create command. And this should run the admin account creator. So I'll create an admin at example.com account with a password of test123. That's now done. I can hit Control-D to exit out of this. And if we want to look at them, we can even type fly /logs, and that'll open up the logs for the application. So I'm going to zoom out a little bit, and then we can come over here and go to /admin and try to log into our admin account. You should see our logs update as I do this. I'm going to use admin at example.com with a password of test123. I'll log in. We're now logged in as an admin, so we have to go back to /admin, and now it looks like we're good to go. So I'm going to come over to products, click on products, and click new product. Let me make sure we have a shipping category. We do. Okay, so I'm going to call this a test, make it $5. We do have to give this a shipping category, otherwise it will yell at us. So I'm going to do that real quick. So we need a master price and a shipping category. We'll click create. We can then come over to images, choose a file to upload, and we'll just go with this Firebase on Rails file. And hopefully, it looks like the console's spinning up. We did get the image to upload, so that looks good. It is appearing here. That is a good first step. We can then come over to the actual home page of the application, and we'll see that we still have no products appearing here. Now, I don't entirely remember why we don't have any products appearing there, but maybe if we come over to the product details, something will jump out at me. Oh, the reason why is because our available on isn't set. So let's set our available on to today's date, and then we'll click update down here. Now let's go to the home page, and we should hopefully see the image appear here. Looks like it did. And our product should now be appearing. Now, the only other thing that I'm not sure about, because I haven't given it enough time, is the images should be persistent because they're being stored in the DigitalOcean space, but there is a chance that over time they won't work because of some nuance with active storage. So in that case, I do apologize. I've let it sit here for over an hour and everything seems to be working just fine, but I never trust active storage to continue to persist. So hopefully this does end up working and the images end up working in addition to how the fly.io instance works. But there is also the concern of the database being a SQLite database built into fly.io. And because that might not have persistent storage, that could be an issue. So if that's an issue, you may want to set up a Postgres database and configure your database.yml to have a production database of that Postgres instance. And then you should be good to go because it should store the links in that production database, which means it should persist as you, even as you redeploy. So I think if I were to redeploy right now, this image might break because I'm not using a Postgres database for this. But I don't know what fly.io's pricing is for a Postgres instance. So that is something else to consider. Okay, so it looks like they do have a free Postgres app that you could run, and it looks like you just use flyctl postgres create to create a Postgres database. And then you probably just go through some of this to connect the Postgres instance to your Rails instance. So that is something else to consider if you're going to be redeploying your application, that you may want that type of persistence, in which case you just go through a basic Postgres setup with fly.io, and you should have something free that works, which I'd be happy to cover in a follow-up tutorial. Okay, so while I was editing the video, I did run into some issues and I found a way to fix it. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to spin up a Postgres database to keep the persistence of the image working between deployments. So to do this, there is a command we're going to run, and we're going to have to run a fly postgres create command, I believe. You're then going to give it a name. In my case, I named mine Solidus _ video. I'll create a second one just for the sake of this example. It's then going to ask you where you want to create the database. So just choose wherever, and then choose a development single node 1x attached. In my case, it'll tell me that validation failed because it already exists, or it needs to have proper symbols or whatever. So once that's done, there's then going to be another command that you can run, and that other command is going to be a fly postgres attach -- app. It's going to be the name of your app. So in my case, it's going to be the Solidus app that we have right here. So we're going to have a Solidus -- video app. And then it's going to be the name of the Postgres database we just created, which will be Solidus - I think I called mine -PG or something. So you do the name of your app, the name of your database, you run this, and this will tell me this doesn't work because it already has that secret. But if you do that properly and your secrets are set as you would expect, and it looks like my Postgres instance might actually be timing out here. But if you do it as it tells you to, you should then get a message that says, here is your URL. We've attached your thing. Here's your hostname URL. You can then come into your database.yaml. You can add in the URL as a production block in your database.yaml and add in the adapter for Postgres. You're then going to want to come over to your gem file, if I can find it. And you're going to want to add the PG gem at the bottom. Now, because our Docker file already has the PG build tools in it, I believe, somewhere, the Postgres client, it should be good to go. And then you should be good to just do another fly deploy to have your Postgres database update itself. Now, in my case, mine is in fact timing out, so I'm going to try and run this again and see if that'll fix it. But in theory, this should cause you to have a working Postgres database setup. Come into the Docker file, and let me get rid of the seed command and see if that'll cause this to work properly. Okay, yeah, so that seems to work. I don't know, the seed seems to be timing out. Maybe there's an issue with how the seed is set up in the Spree core. So I guess you can't do that anymore, but we can always just pop out of here, do a fly ssh console, cd into app, and then do a bin / rails spree _auth : admin : create command. Oh yeah, and actually we can see here that it persisted because we do still have the admin user and the products are still here as well. So we are seeing that persistence. So that is what I was looking for. So now you have a fully persisted app. I'm sorry that the end of this was a little bit sloppy, but it really wasn't until I was editing the video that I saw it finally break. So this should now fix the images going stale and your links breaking as well. So I'm going to go ahead and edit this into the video, and then I'll cut back to whatever I was doing previously. But yeah, hopefully this is helpful. I tried to cover as much as I could. I know people have been running into deployment issues with Rails 7, they've been running into deployment issues with fly.io, and they've been running into deployment issues with Solidus. I think overall the biggest issues that I saw were probably the Docker file changes. So adding in the Node.js, NPM, and libvips. I know this right here is the JavaScript runtime executable missing issue. Same with Yarn. Libvips is a problem people were running into with active storage. In the gem file, rexml was something people were running into. It's something I also ran into. And the SDK S3 is also something people run into with the DigitalOcean spaces. So I tried to touch on everything that people might run into, and hopefully this video serves as like a good jumping off point. You're obviously going to run into some other problems because deploying is never a smooth process, but hopefully this was helpful, and hopefully I will see you in the next tutorial.